If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and click subscribe. The more likes, ratings, and subscriptions that we get, the more we can spread the message and grow our community. Hey, how's it going, everybody? So today's guest is Dan Sheeks.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me and looking forward to it.
Tell a little bit more about your story. How did this all get started for you?
I've been teaching high school for 19 years now. I'm a business and marketing teacher at a public high school. So I've always been interested in business. And more recently, I'd say 5-6 years ago, really got into real estate investing, the early FI movement, or the FIRE movement, some people call it, and advocating for personal finance education for our young people, specifically high school kids. That's kind of my niche, and just have a mission to help as many young people live their best life as I can.
I like how you target the younger generation, because it's actually really refreshing to hear of a high school teacher that is teaching personal finance and different things like that, because it is not something you hear about in the public education system, like, at all. You said you got into the FIRE movement and just personal finance and all of that. What are you doing right now on your own personal journey into financial freedom?
5 or 6 years ago, a couple of things happened. One, I had one rental property, and I was always pretty good with my money. I didn't overspend. I did make a lot of mistakes. And at that time, I met my wife, and she had been investing in real estate for a couple of years at that point. And we've been buying real estate ever since. And yeah, that's where it started.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. When you meet somebody that is on the same wavelength as you, they want to complete the same mission that you want to complete. There's a book that we're going to talk about. You have a book coming out. It's called First to a Million. And one of the things you talk about in the introduction of the book is financial freak is someone who doesn't just subscribe to the commonly accepted life rules of what everybody thinks the typical American dream is. Why is it that somebody who has this mentality of reaching financial independence, why don't they subscribe to this normal, everyday life that you see typical Americans subscribing themselves to?
Yeah, that typical life that you mentioned, I refer to that as the typical American dream pathway that most people subscribe to or follow. It is a proven method. It's worked for millions and millions of people. It's a very noble way to live, and it can provide a lot of happiness. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not, but the reason I have the community and the book and I do what I do is so that people know that there are other options. And again, my focus is on young people. That's where my passion is, working with teenagers and college age students. And I call them freaks. If you're a young person and you actually think about your financial future and you're taking steps to improve your financial future, then you are a young person who is not normal, because most young people don't ever think about this kind of stuff. And so you're different, you're exceptional, you're unique. And so you're freakish, but in a good way. And so that's where the SheeksFreaks came from. My book that I wrote it's the only book for teens that is specifically about achieving early financial independence. How do you get out of that rat race decades before turning 65?
The community that you're building is something that will change lives. People need to understand that there are other options out there besides that. And if you want to live your life while you're a little younger and not have to wait till you're in your 60s, you have to change your mindset. You have to change your lifestyle. With working in a 9-to-5, whatever that may be, there's these traps, right? These job traps. So what would you call like a job trap?
Yeah, in the book, I mentioned two traps. One is the paycheck to paycheck trap, right? Where if you're spending everything you make, you got to pay your bills every month. And so you need that paycheck every month. So to quit a job, to change jobs or change careers or start your own business, that's just not an option for a lot of people, because there's that transition that's really risky. And then the other one I write about is the idea that once they're in a job, they tend to stay there because we don't want to have to update our resume. We don't want to have to go through the job interview process. We don't want to have to apply for 50 jobs to have 10 interviews to get 2 second interviews and maybe 1 job offer. We don't want to run through that gauntlet of different chores. It's not fun. And they just stay where they're at.
Like being complacent. You're complacent with that job and you don't want to change anything. Mm-hmm. And so talking about the FIRE movement, right? Financial independence, retire early. So who is the FIRE movement for?
It's a select group, actually. I don't think it's for everybody. Early financial independence is not something that's easy to get. It does require making some choices that are freakish, honestly. So the FIRE movement is for people who have a mindset where they're willing to make those different choices. So it's for those people who, if you went up to anybody and said, would you like to have the ability to retire or do whatever you want earlier in life? I think everyone would say yes. But then the follow-up is, well, that's possible. It's a proven journey. Many people have done it already. So here's the list of things you need to do. Not everybody's on board for that. Yeah, I think the fire movement is for those people who are actually willing to pull the trigger and make some of these adjustments in their life and earn more and save less and invest wisely. It's kind of what it comes down to, so that they can reach that milestone decades before 65 and then have many more options in their life.
A lot of people look at the fire movement and they say, oh yeah, those guys, they don't spend on anything and they're coupon cutters and this and that cheap. And what do you do to the people that lump everybody into that one category? I guess you can call them like these fire haters or fire extinguishers. That's what I'm going to call them. How do you respond to something like that?
Yeah, I don't say anything to them, because if someone's mind is made up that the fire movement's not for them, then that's fine. But for someone who's contemplating the fire movement, if they had a question and they said, I don't want to live cheap, I don't want to sacrifice the things that I really care about, I would say, well, that's fine, because that's not what the fire movement's about. Cheap is I don't spend any money, or I spend as little money as possible. That's cheap. Frugal is I only spend money on things I value. And there's a big difference there. I always say, if you're living frugally, lavishly, spending money on the things that you value, as you should, the path to FI, to get to that point, shouldn't be a path where you're sacrificing your happiness. You should still have an abundant amount of happiness during the journey and then afterwards as well.
That was also in the book that was talking about the happiness curve. And it shows when you get to that peak point and then when it starts coming back down. If you could, can you share a little bit about what that is and how that affects somebody in their financial independence journey?
Yeah. So the happiness curve that's in my book, it's wrapped around the idea of having enough plus a little bit. And the happiness curve says that your maximum happiness will peak when you have enough plus a little. Enough means you have everything you need to live a safe, healthy lifestyle. But a little extra is good. We deserve to treat ourselves to a nice vacation or other things that we value, like maybe you do really love. The happiness curve starts to go back down, meaning that our happiness is decreasing as we start to pile on more and more stuff. The more things we have, generally, the more stress we have, the more problems we have.
Can you just share with us a little bit like what the difference is between real asset and a false asset?
Real asset is something you own that puts money into your pocket. That's basically the bottom line. It's building your wealth in one way or another. A false asset is an asset that most people think is real, meaning that it's not putting money in your pocket, it's taking money out of your pocket.
So I'd like to get your description of what you would call good debt and bad debt.
That good debt is that's making you money, and bad debt is debt that's not. I would take good debt all day long, every day, because it is, in the end, it's putting money into your pocket, it's building your wealth.
So where can people find you, and tell us about the book?
The subtitle of the book is A Teenager's Guide to Achieving Early Financial Freedom. The book is not just for teenagers. Anybody who's new to the FIRE movement, to the early financial independence strategies and concepts, this book would be super, super helpful. And then I also wrote a workbook that goes along with it. Specifically, the workbook tells them what to do, when to do, how to do it, and why they're doing it.
Where can we find out more about you?
They can find me on Instagram, D Sheeks. I'm also on LinkedIn. And anybody can shoot me an email at dan@SheeksFreaks.com.
It has been an absolute privilege and honor to have you on the show today. Again, thank you so much.
Keep crushing it. Love what you're doing. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And aloha.